Police in Myanmar have filed charges against political leader Aung San Suu Kyi after she was ousted by the country's military. She's facing charges of breaching an import-export law after handheld radios were found in her residence. They were allegedly imported illegally and used without permission. Reuters has also reported members of the military have raided Suu Kyi's political offices. Joining me now for more on this, Christopher Lamb, President of the Australia-Myanmar Institute. Thanks very much for your time. So, look, Suu Kyi, we shouldn't avoid the fact she's got a pretty poor record on human rights, but she won that November election in a landslide. Why now does the military suddenly decide, no, we're not accepting that result?
Nobody has the clear answer to that. There are lots of speculations around, and one of them that I like is that the military felt that they had to deal with her, if they were going to do this at all, before the new parliament met. There were elections held in November. The new parliament was meant to meet for the first time on the 1st of February. That parliament would have elected a new presidency for the country, which means 3 people, one of whom would later become the state president. And I think that what they want to do is to forestall that, and also by stopping the whole political process, to stop the new parliament itself from convening. And that would enable them to attempt, at least, and there has been some discussion of this, to rely on the previous parliament, where the NLD, her party, still had a very big majority, but not as big as the one she had from the election just held.
So what does that mean in practice? I mean, if it relies on the previous parliament, but her party still has majority, what's her future and for the country as well?
One of the stories that I'd heard, and I'd heard it from good sources, was that the military attempted to get the old parliament convened the day before its expiry on the 1st of February. And that new parliament would have met, and some think it would have then been asked by the military to invalidate the election result. That didn't happen. So as it didn't happen, that's that. But it's one of the things that the military apparently sought to do. Other things that the military attempted to do was to get the Union Election Commission, which is the independent body that supervises elections, to introduce what the military called transparency. No one's particularly clear what transparency means in these circumstances because it's an independent body and it operated, I think, pretty transparently. It also conducted the elections under the eyes of lots of observers, foreign and, importantly, national, and nobody there found any great fault with the elections.
So as for the country right now, I mean, it's under military rule, right? But does that stay? Is there going to be someone within the military that emerges as the leader? Will they at least try to have a, I suppose, token hand back to this previous parliament? What's your prediction here?
No, what's happened is that the military have used provisions in the Constitution which entitle the President to summon the National Security Council. That's a shorthand term for it. This National Security Council was not convened by the President because he was also detained, along with Aung San Suu Kyi, but by one of the 2 vice presidents who comes from the military. This body, or the acting president, as he became known, then transferred his powers, his full executive powers, to the senior army general, Min Aung Hlaing. Senior General Min Aung Hlaing then arrogated to himself all legislative, executive and judicial powers. And that's where the constitutional base for this lies. It's a very thin base, and nobody really believes it, or believes, for that matter, the charges which have been levied against Aung San Suu Kyi and, for that matter, the state president, U Win Mint. Let's not forget him in this.
So what about the direction Myanmar goes in? And we've got a lot of overlay there. China's involvement and the extent to which this pushes Myanmar further into the hands of China, if you like.
I don't think there's any very good grounds for asserting that China had any involvement in this election at all. There are people who seem to think that it's a worthwhile thing to say. But Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, was in Myanmar a couple of weeks ago. He made a visit which the Chinese government styled as a visit to meet up with the new government before it took power following the elections. And the Chinese position then seemed to be to welcome the election result and then try to work with whoever was going to take power. And there's a picture of them meeting right now on the screen.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any good basis for thinking that the Chinese worked with the military to overthrow the government. In fact, on the contrary, Wang Yi met with Aung San Suu Kyi. He also met with U Win Mint, the president. He met General Min Aung Hlaing, which is the normal thing that one would do in those things. And there's no evidence anywhere to suggest that this visit was part of a conspiracy to overthrow the elected government. So I don't think it does throw things into the hands of the Chinese, the fact that the military have taken over.
All right, fair enough. Well, you know, a pretty troubling situation, particularly for the Rohingya minority there. So just finally, on the prospects for Rohingya and I suppose people in Myanmar, people power fighting back against the military?
What's happened so far, it's quite interesting. They shut down most internet communication after they took power, but within 6 hours they'd started to reopen it. And now there's a quite free movement of material over the internet. There's a rumour going around right now, as we speak, that they're going to shut down Facebook and Facebook Messenger. But I haven't seen that has happened. But if it does happen, it won't be a big surprise. The thing that makes this different from all the coups that the country's had in the past, and there have been a few, is the arrival of the internet and the arrival of mass communication between people all over the place. The Burmese people are well schooled in how to use the internet. They understand things like VPNs. They know how to use alternative internet routes, and they also know how to use Bluetooth and networks like Mesh to communicate with each other from phone to phone. There will be a lot of attempts made by the army to try and shut this down, but I don't think it'll be successful. There are also mass movements in the country on a civil disobedience campaign. The nights now, since the coup, have been, excuse me, have been followed by people going out into the streets and bashing pots and pans and drums and all sorts of noise-making things through the night in order just to do a civil disobedience campaign. People are going to work, but saying civil disobedience is what they're doing, and they are presumably denying service to the government but allowing it to go to the general public. I don't think there's going to be a lie-down by the public on this. After all, around 80% of them supported her at the last election.